Hey again, it's Stephen. So, a few videos ago, I don't know how many, maybe 7 or 8 or 10, I was talking about when I was first introducing Mary, I was talking about Mary a lot as that epitome of intellect and intelligence that was the human that finally had achieved the necessary wherewithal to be able to return God's love perfectly. So both in terms of just the how long does it take to get to creatures that are smart enough to contemplate God and know that that's what you should do and return His love freely. Um, yeah, it takes a long time. It takes the universe a long time to get to us. Um, and us as epitomized in this case, I was talking about Mary and that sort of aspect that she's can enter the Holy of Holies and commune with God without being killed, the first person that could ever do such a thing. And as went on and on about it, as I am now. And McMo, as my friend McMo was objecting, he says his Protestant spider senses were tingling, and and so I thought, oh well, okay. Well, we can think about it. I thought about it a little bit. I said, well, we can substitute John the Baptist. You can substitute John the Baptist. That should be no problem. John the Baptist is also seen as a sort of an epitome of wisdom. In one of the Gospels, Luke, as it said that, Jesus says, look to this one if you're looking for a perfect person. Look to John the Baptist. And of course, John the Baptist is all wound up with Jesus's birth. He's born about the same time from relatives of Jesus, and his mother and Jesus's mother, so Mary and Anna, meet while they're both pregnant. And the story is that the babies recognize each other even though they're not born yet. Is that they leap for joy is the term, I think John leaps for joy in the presence of the unborn Jesus when Anna and Mary meet. So they're intertwined, we know that because in the John the Baptist ends up baptizing Jesus, and so John is a good substitute if praising Mary so much gives you the willies, then my suggestion was substitute John. I think it works just as well, and so then I hadn't thought about it too much more, but. I don't know. It got me thinking about John more, and I think if you've watched these videos along, you'll see that when I mention Mary in this, the epitome of human evolution, that I'll often mention John in the same breath they're very different, right? So John's story is interesting. So in the persecution of male children by Herod at Jesus' birth, Mary and Joseph take off to Egypt to escape it. But Anna and Zechariah, who are the parents of John the Baptist, they don't run. But I think Zechariah is killed or dies. Well, I'm just not clear on what happens to Zechariah, but it ends up that his mother finds a cave and says, "Well, we're going to raise John. This is an infant, from an infant in this cave, to escape the persecution of Herod." And Zechariah is no longer in the picture. Someone can tell me in the comments what happened with Zechariah. But anyway, but then. Anna dies, right? And the story goes that John is then raised by angels in the cave. All right. So if you're going to my my substitution of John for Mary, Mary is educated by the Holy Spirit in the sanctuary of the church or of the synagogue, and John is educated by angels in a cave. So that's an interesting that John is of the earth, and tied to the earth, the cave, and Mary is tied to the church, to what later becomes the church from the synagogue, right? She's tied by education. They're maybe by natures, right? Mary is more of a priestly sort of, and John is more of a like shamanic, maybe earthly, like shamanic kind of a thing, or yeah. So anyway, so later John is asked later on in his life, hey, come be a priest, come be a bishop, whatever, or come be a whatever. And John's like, no, I'm gonna, he's raised by angels in a cave. That has to be not only the severeness of being in a cave, but I see the angels not as sort of a more severe, not the most, I wouldn't say not unsympathetic, but but they're messengers more than teachers. So your education is going to be, different if you're educated by messengers of the truth than by teachers of the truth. So Mary is educated by the Holy Spirit, a teacher, and John by these angels. So he wants nothing to do with the organization of the priests. He wants to go. Right, yeah, of the rabbis, I guess, at that point, right? I'm probably mixing these things up because we don't have a church yet, so sorry for that. But so he doesn't want anything to do with it, whereas Mary is sort of the epitome of it, or the transformation of it. John is the escape, into the desert, right? So into the desert. We think of that as like a purification, right? Being in the desert is like a pure. So John is, he's wearing uncomfortable clothes in the desert and baptizing people in the Jordan River, and that baptizing was at that point was a Jewish ritual of cleansing, right? So wasn't baptizing, but it was whatever the Jewish ritual of cleansing is called. So John's doing that. He's got a little cult, so Mary is the star, and John is the desert cult, but there's a purity, right? I mean, there's a reason that in the Orthodox Church we look to the Desert Fathers with such reverence, because there's a purity to the desert. It distills your thought. It cleanses you of excess, right? The things that are not needed are left in a desert, and the values of the desert are completely different than the values of a city. And you don't acquire excess baggage in a desert because it literally can cause you to die. You have to be lean and mean, and right. So I see. I see John as this kind of, this more ascetic, right? This more loner, ascetic, semi-crazed, shamanic, raised in a cave by angels. It's this guy. He's a different kind of guy, but still very powerfully holy. And if you look for, as I was saying, if you look forward in the church. 300 or 400 years, there's a reverence for the Desert Fathers. There is throughout the church history. There's a reverence for the holy fool, the outsider, the instructed by angels in a cave. Is this shamanic, or is this pagan, or is this a Christian, or what? How can this wildness? But of course, Jesus is like that. Jesus is like both, right? He's like both Mary and John. He will teach the rabbis at 12 years old what is the way to think, and the rabbis will see in him a great wisdom. That how could this 12-year-old Jesus have this wisdom in the synagogue? And they bow to him, and as this Jesus really has this has this figured out. And but also Jesus in the wilderness, right? Jesus, we think of him as when things get rough, he goes off on his own to contemplate or to be with God. So if you want to commune with God, the idea of go out deep into a garden or go out deep into the desert, if you want to be tested, and if you want to know your mettle, you really need to be in that very stripped down situation. You and God, Job. I think Job comes to mind, right? When you think of this, exiting the comfort of civilization and being revered in civilization and coming face to face with God in the desert of your right, of your darkest of your dark night. So John representing sort of the wild, escape to the desert, and Mary the teach the truth in the synagogue. These two aspects of Christ that we see, not his human and godliness, which is always talked about, how is he a human and how is he a God? But I think equally interesting is how is he both the instructor at 12 years old in the synagogue of the high priests, and they recognize immediately that he knows more than they do. And at the same time be the one who can go to the desert for 40 days and wrestle with the devil and without apparently having means to sustain, not only sustains but comes out having vanquished Satan, right? And so I think John represents that side well. He and Jesus recognizes that, and Jesus goes to John to meet God in a way, right? I mean, he is God, but he goes to John also to meet God. So that's pretty crazy. Like, baptize me in the Jordan, so that I can commune with God, who I am. It's what is going on here, right? So theophany is this beautiful. It's coming up. It's the next holiday after Christmas. It's, I think, the 7th or 8th for the Orthodox. So the theophany is where the Holy Spirit in the form of a dove comes down from and by John the Baptist's cleansing action, using the water as the ancient Hebrew tradition would do, causes Christ, who is gone to the desert to commune with God in the severe stripped down way. The water of baptism strips you of sin, right? It strips you of excess. It strips you of the things that are not going to help you in the desert, in the meeting directly with God. And this God band is revitalized, I suppose you might say, with the Holy Spirit, who he is already. It's like I can hear Sam Tiedemann thinking, "Wow, it's like, isn't this Trinity just like something's very wrong here?" Like, but I don't know. It's it's if you go with my thinking, it's the hypostasis of the quantum of the of the Lord, right? So. Anyway, I wrote a short little poem. I wrote a poem in the middle of the night last night, and I haven't done a poem in a long time. But this is I mean, you're going to say so. This poem is called "Raised by Angels," right? Raised by angels. John was instructed by ear in antiphonal choirs, singing the bright hypotheses in modal geometries. I imagine him baptized by such Pythagorean angelic intellect. And for recreation, he swam in God's infinities by gazing into a pool of deathless water, reflecting Sagittarius's stars, his quarry the sun, and the arrow a dove. So that's it for today. Thanks.